Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy's e-learning program. I am Mrs. Janelle Dillon Shepherd and I'll be your tutor for Principles of Business. Today, our topic would be internal organizational environment, to which we would look at leadership. Our objectives are, number 1, to outline the essential characteristics of a good leader, 2, to discuss the different leadership styles, and 3, to identify the potential sources of conflict within an organization. So let's go. Before we look at the terminology leaders and leadership, I want to ask a very important question. That question is a leader born, made, or a combination of the two? Let's think about it. Is a leader born, made, or a combination of the two? I know some students would say, well, Miss, a leader is born because we have Prince Charles being born into leadership, and based on the level of succession, he may or may not someday be king. All right. Another student might say, Miss, we have an elected leader, the Honorable Ansel Dennis, who is now the Chief Secretary in the in the Tobago House of Assembly. And then they may say, Miss, a combination of the two, because somebody may have been born into leadership. However, they would have to learn how to be a good leader. Okay, which is quite correct. So yes, we may have a very strong bloodline that makes us a leader. However, that person would definitely have to learn and to understand what their place is in society and learn the steps in which would make them a good leader, right? Just like you may have some characteristics that make you a good leader, or you may have been pushed into leadership by a teacher within a group, or you realize that there is a leader and the leader is not functioning, so therefore you take the opportunity to take the mantle and to be a leader within that group. All right, so today we're going to look at the definition of what leadership is and who is a leader, and then we'll go from there. So a leader refers to the ability, or leadership refers to the ability of a person to motivate or influence others to work constructively. Let's pick out the important words. Constructively towards the effectiveness and success of the organization. For what? For whatever goals or objectives that are involved within the organization. All right, so it's very important that leadership, whoever governs that leadership, helps to motivate and influence persons, employees, or subordinates within the organization to move effectively and successfully to command whatever goals. So now we're looking at who a leader is. And that's the person who basically leads the organization or commands the authority within the organization at any given point in time. So for the school, that person is the principal within an organization. That person will be the CEO. Within the THA, that person is the Honorable Mr. Ansel Dennis, the US government, and that is Mr. Trump. All right? So, and you have different persons at different levels of leadership. Okay? And we know that leaders carry different characteristics, and we learned 2 already from the definition of leadership, which is motivation and to influence others. All right? So we are getting straight into the characteristics, which I know some of you possess as well. So let's look at it. The first one, you have to be focused. Honesty, flexibility, trustworthy, intelligent. All right? So let's look at each one in depth. The first one we're going to look at is honesty. Honesty deals with ethics. And ethics looks at what is right and what is wrong. So we know that this is wrong. No stealing, no lying. All right? Honesty, it's very important. That basically is linked to you as an individual, and that takes you throughout your life. It also helps you to build your reputation, because persons would look at you and they would say, oh yes, I know this person from the village, or I know her from school, or I know her parents, and you know, she's a good little girl or boy or whatever. And it helps in terms of recommendations and so on when going to look for jobs, and so people look at that too. Teachers look at that. All right? So honesty is definitely linked with being ethical, you being able to tell the truth. Another example is that I have a student going to an interview in a bank, and one of the ethics questions will, what would you do if you see one of your co-workers doing something unethical? And the answer that individual gave was, I would tell a supervisor or someone in authority. But she said, Miss, in truth and in fact, I wouldn't really want to get into the situation, so I may not say anything. All right, and being realistic, that's how we are as humans, right? We know what the right thing is, but sometimes we may not want to get entangled into a situation that we think does not impact directly on us. All right, so moving on to the other characteristics on the board, we need to recognize when we make mistakes and try to remedy those mistakes, right? That's very important. We are all human, and sometimes we do make mistakes. Allow better assessment of growth within the organization. So when you operate within an organization as well, you have to work within a certain standard. And within that standard, you may have to do a performance appraisal, which definitely would impact your ethics, right? So your managers would definitely look at that, or your teachers would look at that. All right, so that's honesty. Number 2, let's look at flexibility. So the first one that is on the board is adapting to change, and we know that change is constant. Look at the situation that we're in now. We are now experiencing a pandemic, and it has definitely changed the way of life. We're now using the word new normal. So we're no longer in school one-on-one, but we're using online systems, TVs, and whatever, which is important for us as teachers to reach you, right? Although we're not in that same space. So in terms of flexibility, alarm may have gone off. Example, penny savers. I was driving there some nights, and the alarm went off, and Miss Warner had to find herself there wherever she was before. She had to find herself there because she is the owner of that organization. All right, the police was there. They were trying to ensure that the alarm was nothing serious, and the situation was covered. All right, so no matter if the alarm goes off at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, she has to avail herself, and as well the police. Number 2, willing to accommodate views. So everybody is entitled to their own opinion, yes, and we must respect each other. So as a leader, it's important for one to voice their opinion as well as listen to others and communicate with each other. Then to come up with a possible decision. And 3, be open-minded. Think out of the box. We never know what would happen, when would happen, when whatever would happen. All right, so flexibility, being open-minded. Number 3, being trustworthy, and that comes hand in hand with honesty, right? Once you are honest and ethical, and persons see that you act in a certain manner, they would definitely commit to team goals, right? And employees look at that. They look to see how you operate, if you are comfortable speaking and interacting with them, and if you tell the truth or not, and that would impact on how they deal with you, right? So it's important for employees or subordinates to be comfortable to come to you. Focus, having the vision and disrupting the norm. So Facebook, Amazon, TikTok, the new thing, disrupting what we know. Well, TikTok definitely disrupt Facebook, right? Because if you compare the ratings of the two, you'll see where every young person wants to be on TikTok right now, even the over 30s and over 40s, right? And it's doing things outside the norm. Right now, the new normal, we have to wear a mask, we have to wash our hands constantly, and we have to social distance, all right? So coming out of focus, you have to be able to identify what can be and managing how we can get there as well as a leader, as a manager, all right? And you have to implement change and the change management process. Okay, we are going to start at step 1 and follow on to step 2 and step 3 until we can get back to where we were before, or probably things change to how we need them to be in the end. So everything is a process. All right, so we have to focus on the new normal and how we intend to get there. Last one, intelligence. Having the ability to think logically, critically, being able to analyze accurately and to interpret problems is very important. You must be smart. You must be able to think out of the box. You must be able to see 10 steps ahead of what is going to happen. All right, and with this comes calculating risk. So if we're doing plan A, what is the consequence of doing plan A? Then we must have a plan B. What is the consequence of that? A plan C, and so on and so on. And as leaders, we need to think out of the box. The principal, the CEO, every level of leadership. The Honorable Ansel Dennis, who basically hit the ground running. I saw where he was visiting a lot of farms and he had a lot of press conferences, so he's definitely visual in Tobago's space, and that's very good as a young person, and for us to understand that he's there and he's working along with the Tobagonians to get somewhere. All right, there are other characteristics like being a people person, as I said, calculating risk, networking, and so on. All right, persevering. So there are more to the characteristics that I've listed here, and that's just to name a few. All right, so you could definitely look to see what characteristic you possess to see if you're going to be a good leader or not. All right, so let's go to our first activity. Simple multiple choice question that I know definitely would come for CXE. All right, so we go, which of the following demonstrates the characteristics of a good leader? 1, inspiring workers. 2, delegating responsibility. 3, making intelligent decisions. So take 30 seconds. 1, inspiring workers, delegating responsibility, and making intelligent decisions. All right, so if you have D as your answer, you are quite correct, and you are paying attention, and it means that we can now move on. So now we are actually going to look at the different leadership styles that we have within our space. All right, here we have highlighted 3 leadership styles: autocratic, which is also known as authoritarian, democratic, which is also known as participative, and laissez-faire, which is also known as free rein. And I could also add on another one, charismatic, right, which I'll focus on more after. So let's look at autocratic as the first leadership style. And autocratic basically looks at all decisions being made by the leader. So if the leader is the principal, if the leader is the CEO, if the leader is the chief secretary, all decisions are made by that person without consultation. Whatever they decide to do, that is what is going to happen. And it happens in a top-down manner. Remember we did organizational structures where we looked at chain of command. So the chain of command that would be used here is the top-down line of communication, where information just flows from the leader to the subordinates or the employees. All right. Advantage of this type of leadership is that quick decisions are made. Quick decisions are made because there's no consultation with employees or the subordinates or the secretaries or anyone. All right. There's a clear chain of command, see, in terms of who the head is, who the subordinates or the employees are as well. all right, who each person is reporting to on the organizational structure. Disadvantages: employees may lack sense of belonging because everything is being told to them. And they will definitely lack creativity and innovation. They would not feel as being a part of the organization and wanting to contribute to the organization because their opinions does not matter, or the leader does not want to hear what that subordinate or employee have to say. So this is definitely a disadvantage in terms of the decision-making process. All right, it stifles creativity, so we have to be careful with that. So autocratic, all the decisions are made by the leader, and it's top-down in terms of the chain of command on the organizational structure. So you could see from the head to the subordinates. All right, disadvantages: lacks creativity and innovation when dealing with the employees or the subordinates. Number 2, democratic. Within the democratic space, we have employees being encouraged to participate in the decision-making process. So we see where employees can give their opinion, their thoughts, and this would basically boost their morale. They would want to come to work, they would want to come up with new ideas, they would want to be innovative, right? And this uses the two-way flow of communication, which is top-down and bottom-up. So this manager would basically have an open door policy where employees can come in at any point in time and speak to their desires or opinions of what is happening within the organization. And as well, the manager can go to them and do the same thing. All right. Advantages are that employees feel a greater sense of belonging, which I just said, and decision-making process may be a little slow here, but that's fine. And it encourages teamwork, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. Because, for example, my business department, I would be doing a program or I would be doing a test, and I want to get feedback based on whatever I'm doing to ensure that I'm doing it correctly. So I would ask within my department, hey, do you think I should do this, or how do you think I should approach this situation, and get feedback from different teachers, and then put all the information together, and I would have gotten a better outcome than just sitting down and do it myself, because I'm getting different points of views. Same thing you as students, when we put you into groups, we have students from different levels, students from different subject areas could bring different thoughts together, and you know, students coming together and working with other students is better than working on your own. Two heads are always better than one, right? You share a different perspective, you share different ideas, and it really helps and encourages other students to work and do better. All right? So disadvantages: decision making is slow because we have 2, 3, 4, 5 people or 10 wanting to bring everything they want to the table, and it would definitely be time consuming, right? Employees may influence decision based on personal preferences, their skills, rather than looking at the organizational goals, all right? And the organizational goals are important. Everything that you bring to the table must be in line with that. So if the organization goals is scholarship, it means that everything must be wrapped around the scholarships, how you lay out the subject areas, how the teachers teach, and all of that as well. All right? So, third one, laissez-faire. This is where the employee or the subordinate work with little or no supervision. The task is given, and the manager leaves the employee or the subordinate. So you as students, the teachers leave you to do the work and probably come back 5 minutes before the bell and collect. Or as an employee, the employee is given a deadline, which is not bad at times. Employees make all the decisions. They look at the task and they see how they want to go about doing the task. And within that, they would learn to be creative. They would learn to be innovative and they would feel a sense of belonging to the organization and a sense of being a boss, kind of like, because they are the ones making the decision within here on how they would create it or how they would do the task. All right. The decision-making process would not be slow and it would not be fast. It depends on the task itself, right? Advantage of this is that it helps the worker to develop creativity and innovation. And in terms of disadvantages, it's slow and it's not fast, but it's just in the middle there. We talked about it. Right? And they have little supervision. However, it depends on the employee themselves, because based on who the person is, they can be left to work alone or they cannot be left without supervision. They would just go and do their own thing and not do the task at all. All right? So this leadership style definitely is dependent on the students you have or the employees within an organization. So the leader would need to look to see what kind of staff they have, or the teacher needs to look to see what kind of students they have, and then decide how they would go about doing the task within the class or within the organization. All right. However, no leadership style should be used in isolation. The 3 leadership styles should be used based on the situation. So no leader should just be autocratic, no leader should just be democratic, no leader should just be laissez-faire. The combination of the 3 should be used dependent on the situation or the issue at hand. All right? So there are some times when I would be very autocratic. There would be some times when I would be democratic. Okay, we're going to do an assignment today. Tell me how you want to do this and the period of time that you want to do it for. And then we talk about it and we come up with an end result and we go from there. All right. Then I would have mentioned before charismatic leadership, which is the way that person becomes a leader through the way they act, the way they behave, the way they dress. Right. So to my students, we had a teacher, Mr. Augustine, the way he carries about himself, the words that he uses, and he really lets you hang on every single word that he uses. Okay, so remember we looked at 3 leadership styles, autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire. All 3 should be used based on the situation or the issue that you're dealing with. You don't need to be autocratic at all times or democratic at all times or laissez-faire at all times. Please combine the 3. All right, it depends on the task, the situation, or the issue at hand. Okay, so we're almost there. We are going to activity number 2, which is another multiple choice question that you should see on your CXC paper. So please pay attention. Mr. Lloyd, the manager of LM Limited, holds regular staff meeting to listen to ideas from employees before making decisions that would affect the future of the company. What is the leadership style? What is the leadership style that Mr. Lloyd employ? A, autocratic. Is he making decisions on his own? B, democratic. Is he listening to employees? 3, charismatic. Or D, leadership, laissez-faire, sorry. D, laissez-faire. Did he leave them to do the task on their own? So come on, figure out the answer. It's very easy. All right. So if you had D as the answer, you're correct. Right? Democratic. He listened to their ideas before making decisions for the company. All right? So, democratic, and these are the words that should jump out to you when speaking about democratic. All right? So, the last thing that we're going to look at before we leave class today are the sources of conflict within an organization, which leaders definitely need to deal with. All right? And within your home, within your classroom, as students, you experience sources of conflict. So let's look at it from a business perspective. All right, so the first one, preferential treatment by management. Some of you as students, you complain that teachers have their preference in terms of who their best students are, and they give them more marks, although it's not necessary, and they're teachers' pets and whatever. Within the workplace as well, you see where people experience the same thing. The manager might be a cousin of somebody working in the organization, so, you know, or they would have gone to school or something like that. So you see preferential treatment. Or it could just be that the person is a good worker and the manager really likes the person because of their work ethics. So that's why you could probably have preferential treatment. All right. Number 2, poor working conditions. Within your classroom, you might say, well, miss, there's no AC, we're so hot, there's no fan. In the workplace, it's the same thing. If you have poor ventilation, if you have broken desks and chairs and so on, and you don't have the resources for the person to work well, then you would definitely have some issues there. And this is an issue that the leader has to work with to ensure that all employees are safe, that all employees have their resources that they need to work with, and that all employees know what they have to do on any given day. All right? Number 3 is gossip. And this is an informal way of communicating information within your classroom, within your workspace, right? Sometimes what happens is that information from a meeting or what was said between manager and somebody else would be carrying around the office, but persons would add in some extra juice to it. So the story would be juicy, right? Although the information sometimes may not be accurate. So this causes issue within the workplace. Co-workers may cuss out and all of those things because of lack of correct information. And this is where ethics comes in, knowing right from wrong and knowing what to do. All right? Number 4, pay disputes. A good example, teachers. We have permanent teachers and we have contract teachers, and there was an issue where both teachers were doing the same thing, sometimes dependent on who the contract teachers even more, but we have a dispute where they are not known as teachers, right? They are known as educators, while permanent teachers are known as permanent teachers and being paid more, all right? So this is a dispute that would have definitely gone to court, and the THA had to deal with. Yeah, even though they carry the same duties and responsibilities as regular teachers. Unfair dismissal is another issue. We have a government agency that deals with unfair dismissal where you might be working in an organization, and because of probably a political affiliation, just an example, political affiliation, or because you think that you are doing the job spec that you were given correctly and somebody else isn't, and you may speak out against it, the manager or the leader may feel, well, you have no right to do that and you can be dismissed, right? However, there are agencies that look out for this type of habits, and you can go to them to be remedied, all right? Job security is another issue where you would want to ensure that you have a job, long sustainable job that would help you to raise your standard of living, giving you food, shelter, clothing. But because of, like, for example, now where you have the pandemic and then the Prime Minister had to close down certain places in order to keep us safe, job security might have been an issue. So bosses would have had to send persons home or send persons working on shifts and so on. So that definitely would hamper this, all right? Then you have sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is an issue. It can be male to female, female to male. Don't just think one track. And it can be where as simple as passing somebody looking at you or talking to you in a certain way and you're feeling uncomfortable, but it is a situation that you could deal with when talking to the leader or the manager of the organization, and they should speak to HR and deal with this issue because it's very important. And then you have verbal abuse, how the manager speaks to you or probably doesn't speak to you, or they would talk to your other colleagues and would not come to talk to you directly, or write you letters and say things that are not true. All right? So this is where not only management comes in, but you have something called a union within your organization. Teachers have tutor. Every organization basically have a union. Banks, PSA, which is a public service, right? And they have a union that would fight for you in terms of the welfare of the employees, right? And this is where we know who, a famous person in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Watson Duke. He's always on the news, always on Facebook, right? And he is PSA's union rep, and he's always there fighting for immigration workers, fighting for health workers, and he deals with all these issues and more. All right, so this is something that we're going to dive more into in a later lesson. However, leadership, employees, and as well the trade unions would come into the different sources of conflict and how leadership best deal with these types of conflict. And I do hope that class was informative today, and I hope I see you at the next session. Take care.